categories are going to be used no matter what. But to say to yourself, when I encounter people, my brain wants to put them into a box. Just give yourself a second to say, is it a box that's going to allow for me to see that person as having value and worth?
Welcome to Created Creative. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ruth. And we are lucky this week. We have such an interesting person that we got to talk to. Yes.
So Ruth has known well for a long time, and I have known of for a long time.
Yep.
I mean, I have talked to him, but I don't know him the way you do.
Yes, I've known him since I was 19 years old. And since then, he's gone on to do some very cool things. And there's been some pieces of this interview that I have been thinking about all week. So
I love that. I actually quoted him in a preschool application.
that is excellent. Yeah. So this is our interview with Matt Marohl.
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Hey, it's good to see you both.
Yes, you too.
You look very academic with all the books. You understood the assignment.
Oh, yes, it is my office. So I used to have an entire section of all goth and punk books, but I just recently brought them home so that they can be my home comfort blanket.
The books are the comfort blanket?
Yeah.
I love it.
Excellent. Oh, it's so nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Ruth. The amount of affectionate stories and memories I have that are Ruth involved are so many. Like all of these times where just you were there and it made things better. And just like the being of you is so etched into my like affectionate memory that I feel like we could go decades. But when I see you, my first reaction is Ruth is the greatest.
The feeling is mutual. Yeah, we had a lot of fun working at camp and being at Concordia and at seminary. And
that's a lot of
things. I know it was really good memories.
Informative years.
We went camping in the Badlands one time and like backpacking. Do you remember that? It was like over the 4th of July.
I do.
Thank goodness I had Eagle Scout with me. I hadn't backpacked for quite a while.
And then what I liked on that, we have not spent a lot of time together, but when we have, I've just always thought, I just like knowing you exist in the world. Like someone who does theater, and it feels like whatever kind of creative thing you touch just sort of blossoms into flowers.
Thank you.
True.
So
true. Would you take a moment to introduce yourselves to?
I am Matt. I am the college pastor at St. Olaf College, and I've had a long career of bouncing between lots of different positions, and I've loved a lot of steps along the way. I've been a professor. I have a PhD in New Testament and taught at Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois. I've been a pastor in the Chicago area. I was a student at the University of St. Andrews in St. Andrews, Scotland. So I had a really cool 3 years of being an international student. And now I'm in my 14th year at St. Olaf. I love my job.
Yeah,
14th year. Isn't that wild?
And I last saw you in a parade in the town where St. Olaf is located.
Oh, yes. My daughter, who is a sophomore in high school, is in dance. And one of the fundraisers is to carry signs. So I was carrying a sign and I saw Don waving and saying hello. And I thought, you never know who and when you're going to see cool people.
Yes.
It's also funny because I was there with people who lived in Northfield and I was the only one who got a shout out from the parade.
And long before Matt was so important and accomplished, I knew him from Concordia in Moorhead, and we worked together. And actually, we all three have in common that we were on youth encounter teams. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and it's been a beautiful thing, Matt, to see your career and all of the projects that you have worked on. And we're going to talk about some of those today. Have you written 5 books now? Is that right?
I think 5. And then I've written sections of other books. And then I've been an editor for 4 different Bible projects, which is really cool. So I've worked on a lot of different writing projects.
That's wonderful. So most recently, you have a commentary on Hebrews. Can you tell us a little about that?
I do. Yeah. So 20 years ago, I did my PhD dissertation on Hebrews. And I graduated with my PhD in 2005. And now it's 2025, 20 years later. My dissertation was published, and I've written another small commentary on Hebrews. But this is the culmination of a lot of thinking for a long time. And I finally feel like I'm ready to put Hebrews to bed. It may wake up again at some point, but I'm ready to tuck it in to say And I,
So, like, what was so compelling about Hebrews for more than 20 years if you got the PhD in 2005? What's so fun about
uh,
Hebrews? A book of the Bible for our listeners who may not know.
yeah, so the Hebrews is a book of the New Testament that is not popular. People who love the Bible have never read Hebrews. And I am asked to do a lot of things, and I'm never asked to talk about Hebrews. So, except today, which this is great. I became really fascinated with a New Testament scholar named Philip Essler because he used 25 years ago a social psychological model called social identity theory that said in the first century world, people that were living and writing and thinking about identity in the first century. What does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean to claim an identity? This model was an appropriate way of thinking about how comparison was used. And so he wrote a book on Galatians in the late 90s, and I read it and I emailed him and said, I'd like to study with you. I want to do what you're doing. And at the time, we did not have any idea that social identity theory would gain traction. He wrote a book. I thought it was great. I wanted to do similar work. And at the time, we actually even thought if my dissertation gets published, that's likely the last things we'll do with social identity theory. And the reason I chose Hebrews is that Hebrews is just constant comparison. Every single chapter, Jesus is being compared with someone or with a group. Jesus as high priest, Jesus is compared with Moses. The faithfulness of Jesus is compared with lots of different examples of faithfulness. But in the last 20 years, this way of reading biblical text has just exploded. And so I've been asked over and over again to write using a social identity perspective. And so the Hebrews commentary is actually called, it's a social identity commentary. And so it uses a really specific model with which to read the whole book.
How does this help me in my life?
Great. So, how it helps you, I think, is really fascinating. In the first century and still today, in many ways, the way that identity is formed is through comparisons. For example, we might say Lutherans aren't Catholics because they do this and we do this. I use examples all the time. Like, I married into a family of Green Bay Packer fans, and Green Bay Packer fans are a certain culture. And you could say, we do this, but they do that.
Right.
And so the comparison between people is a way that identity is often formed. And people do it all the time, just without even thinking about it. If you say, what does it mean to be whatever you are, an English teacher? You'd say it's really different than being a biology teacher because we blank. And what that does, though, is a lot of times people assume that comparison is between groups, and it's between groups where one group is being held up as superior to the other group, because comparisons are really most often not neutral. We make a comparison where we are the superior group and whoever we're comparing ourselves with is the inferior group.
They're like, I'm an English teacher.
Exactly.
I would never.
Yeah, I'm not a Packer fan.
Right.
They're silly in all these ways. They wear cheese on their head or whatever. And because there's so much comparison in Hebrews, it would be easy for people, and they have for hundreds of years, to say the comparison is between Christianity and Judaism, and Christianity is good and Judaism is bad. And that's been such a dominant reading, and I don't think that is at all what's happening in the text. So one way that this work that I'm doing has actually really been helpful is that people can say not all comparisons are between groups, and not all comparisons are lifting one up and putting another down. And I think this is a text actually that describes what does it mean to follow Jesus in a way that is not anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, but it's read that way.
So you are done with Hebrews. You're not done with social identity theory.
Yeah, I don't know. One of the things, it is becoming a social psychological theory that is used in anti-racism training. It's one that is used to talk about how we form group identities in the United States that are sometimes really healthy and sometimes not so healthy, because it deals with how do we categorize the world? How do we use stereotypes? How do we attach value to the categories that we use? And we do it our whole lives. So like in high school band, you were like, we're in band, but we're not in choir, or we're musicians, but we're not athletes, or and even within, and the thing is, we keep categorizing smaller. So like even in band, you're like, I'm a brass, I'm not a woodwind or whatever. And that comparison really does impact red state, blue state thinking. It impacts the way we think about white nationalism, mega Trumpism. We do just use categories all the time. And I think what I'm doing speaks benefits to how we just do it naturally, but how it can really prevent us from engaging in ways that's more meaningful and more interpersonal.
So what's the antidote?
The antidote is to be aware of the categories you
Mm.
use and to be aware of where they came from. Social psychologists would say we have to categorize everything, otherwise, everything in life would be random. So
Yeah,
if I
we
said,
can
hey, come over to my house for dinner, you'd go, oh, dinner at Matt's house. It's not going to be particularly formal. If I want to bring something, I might bring like flowers or a pie or something. I don't have to wear a gown. I don't have to
Right.
rent a tux. You know what dinner at my house would
Right.
look like, even if, you haven't eaten with
It's
me.
probably in the evening. It's
Probably in the
probably in
evening.
Northfield. Yeah.
I'll ask if you have any allergies, if you're a vegetarian. So if you didn't have those categories, everything would just be chaos. And so categories are going to be used no matter what. But to say to yourself, when I encounter people or places or things, my brain wants to put them into a box. And am I happy about the box I'm using? To just give yourself a second to say, when I put them into that box, is it a box that's helpful to me? Is it a box that's going to allow for me to see that person as having value and worth and dignity? Or is it a box where I put them in, I label it, I judge it, I seal it away, and they're sealed off in a Ziploc bag of judgment? And then as a friend, as a parent, I think, what categories am I giving my daughters? What am I teaching them to value? What people am I teaching them to value more than others? Because we do. We do when we're driving. We point out certain vehicles for good or for bad. We point out houses. We point out music.
And I have some more questions about the Hebrews commentary, but before we get to those, I wanted to ask, right before the Hebrews commentary came out, you wrote quite a different book. What was it? Unscheduled Grace. And could you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, Unscheduled Grace is a devotion book for college students. And when 12 years ago, 2014, when I was very excited for my colleague Katie to come on board and join our team, that summer I had some time. And so I collected a bunch of different writings that I had done and made a devotion book that we just spiral bound and gave to St. Olaf students for free. It had 40 devotions in it and a bunch of prayers. And we printed, I don't know, 200 or 300 of them, and they were just snatched up right at the beginning of the year. And so then when Katie came, we decided that all year, throughout the year, whenever we wrote something, we'd edit it into a devotion or a prayer, keep a big file, and every summer we'd create our own devotion books. And it was cool. It was a way of us giving students something for free at the beginning of the year that could speak to them as college students. We wanted all of our writing to be really open and invitational and filled with grace, LGBTQA plus open and affirming. We wanted it to reflect the kind of ministry that we hope to offer every day. And so we had been writing a lot of these devotion books. And a few years ago, I said to a good friend who works at Augsburg Fortress, hey, we have these. It would be easy for you to just create a greatest hits.
Take it.
Yeah, we have a bunch of them. Pick the ones you like and put it out. And at the time, it didn't match with kind of what their vision was for their scheduling. And so I thought, well, I've offered and nothing is going to come of that. And then a couple of years later, we were at an event and she said, I want to revisit that conversation. And I was really thrilled because we just kept every year putting out a devotion book. And then I just handed over all of the files and it was published and it sold well and people are excited about it. And it meets a need. The reason why we did it is a lot of devotion books that are written for 18 to 22-year-olds tend to be evangelical in theology. And we wanted one that was a little bit more of a liberal Protestant, where we used language of gay, lesbian, queer. We used a kind of theological language that I didn't see when I looked on Amazon. And so it meets a need.
And so with this creative process, we've had quite a few authors on the podcast, but I don't know that we've had anyone who writes such academic work as like the Hebrews commentary. So I'm interested to hear a little more about the creative process with writing something like.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm going to start by saying it's all discipline. So when I was in the heart of writing it, I knew I had to write about 300 pages. And every day from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., I sat and I wrote. And I divide the work into research. There's the figuring out what I need to include. Then I create time for the reading and taking notes. And then I work with an extremely intricate outline. And then I write. And I create a system. Actually, I created this when I was doing my PhD dissertation, and my classmates teased me. And then a couple of months in, they're all like, teach us the system. But everything I do, I create kind of a point value for, so that at the end of each day, I know what I need to achieve. And I can can work ahead. So like that summer, we wanted to go to the state fair and I knew I didn't want to work that day. So I knew exactly what I would have to do to work ahead so that I don't have to work a day. If I want to take 2 or 3 days off, I know exactly what needs to be done. So that's word count. It's the kind of material that I need to produce every single day. And the more I got into it, one of the things that I found is that at the end of some days, I would just be like, I am a genius. I have the greatest ideas ever. No one has ever thought like I think. And then other days, you're like, I am the worst. I can't believe that I'm even invited to write this commentary. My thinking is so pedestrian. So I would, at the end of every day, give myself a grade. I have a big sheet, a calendar where I have how many words did I write that day? Where did it fit into the commentary? And then I would grade myself. And then a week later, I would read what I wrote as like my A grade. And then I'd read what I wrote as like a C grade or a D grade. And what I found after doing this for a while is that I couldn't tell the difference. Like my A writing was the same as my C writing, which was in some ways sad because you're like, oh, maybe I'm just like a C writer or whatever. And then, but it actually really helped because it made me realize that there is at some point really a consistency to what you do. And you have a style and you have a way of doing it. And on those days when you don't feel great, you feel like, oh, I'm just doing C-level work. It's probably better than you think. And on the days when you're thinking like, oh, I'm a genius, it's like, oh, keep it in check, big guy. You're very much you producing your level. But actually then once I kept grading myself, I realized that by just constantly producing, at the end, it's going to be much more consistent and coherent than like one section that's great and one section that's dull. And it feels like a whole work.
It's encouraging to think, yes, when it feels like you're not writing well, it probably is good enough.
Yeah. And I think for like a commentary or a book that's several hundred pages of kind of academic writing, what's really fun for me is to, at the beginning, really spend a ton of time doing what our 8th grade English teachers told us to do and we didn't want to, which was create an incredibly detailed outline. So I would break a couple hundred pages of text. Let's say it's a 200-page document I want to write into 100 2-page papers, essentially. And if you know exactly what has to happen, what it does is it also eliminates the need for like intros and conclusions because it's so broken up. And then you can jump around. It's not like you write all the beginning, you lose steam. You just know, okay, this day I want to do this, or this day I want to do this. And you just write these little 2-page documents, you're done, you save it, and you move on to the next one. And it allows for a real freshness. You start with a new idea. It's easy to see a lot of momentum that way because you're constantly building on a scaffolding and you can see something being built.
Yeah. I love that your example wasn't like, I worked ahead to have Christmas with my family. It was, I worked ahead for the state fair. I love the fair.
I know.
That was perfect.
Don loves the state fair.
That is, then, Don, I know that there's a lot of respect I have for you. And that's one more reason to enjoy you.
So would you say that most days that's your rhythm is from 6 to 8 a.m. that you're in the chair and writing?
For me, if I'm working on a project, I'll spend 2 hours a day every single day, 6 to 8 for 5 months or something. But then if I'm not writing, I'm really off. I am totally a shallow thinker completely. There's no middle ground. And yeah, one of the things too that I would want to talk about is the real difference between solo writing and working with my colleague Katie, because it's such a different process. And I'm prouder, I think, of the work I did with Katie because I love being on a team. I just love working with other people. I feel like together, it always takes longer and it's always harder and it's always more frustrating and it's always better. It's just always better. And we still, I think, unusual for pastors that work together. We talk about sermons every week. We edit and critique each other's writings. We talk about prayers so that we can both feel like we're really saying what we want to say in the ways that we want to say and doing the ministry we want to do and being the creative thinkers that we want to be. And working on that devotion book every year and together is so much more fun than sitting up from 6 to 8 a.m. alone.
Yeah.
You've done the academic books and done the devotional book. Do you sometimes get the itch to write something completely different?
So I'm going to say something true. I really do not think I would never use the word author to describe myself. And I don't think of myself as a writer. I think I'm in a position where I've been invited to do really cool projects that I'm passionate about and I like to do. And I have an education and a skill set for it. And it's something that I do, that I am. It's not like my identity. It's not something I have to do. It's not like I think some people who are creative, it truly is just so much them that if they didn't do it, they'd fall
Mm.
over. And for me, I love being creative and I love using some of the skill sets I have. And I imagine that I'll keep writing and keep doing projects. But like when we're just out for, I don't know, sandwich together or something, I want to talk about music. I want to talk about concerts. I want to talk about other things. This is not like central to my heart. It's something I really love doing, but I find a big difference between doing and being. And writing is something I do, but it's not something that I am. I think it would be really fun. But I also, if that never happened, it wouldn't be like at the end of my life, I'd say, oh, I never wrote poetry or something. I'd just be like, I don't know, let's listen to a good album.
Yes. Well, and anybody who knows you, Matt, knows how central music is to who you are. And as you sit there in your First Ave sweater.
It's a Friday, and I thought I wanted to channel the spirit of First Avenue at work today.
I love it. And so one of the things that we often ask people is, who are some of your favorite creators?
It's a great question. I'll answer with 3 very different answers. I really like, in the world of theology and biblical studies, people that make interesting connections. And the interesting connections to me still happen to be around identity creation and text. My supervisor from my PhD, Philip Essler, keeps writing books that really fascinate me because he sees ways of thinking about identity that shed light on a first century Mediterranean world and a 21st century North Atlantic world. Philip Essler, I love. Music to me is like central to my being. I listen to music all the time. If I don't have music going, I just like it's a day without sunshine. So my favorite creators tend to be musicians, and I listen to things that I've heard for 40 years, and I listen to new music. The new one that I would say a great new band, and they're not really new, they've been around for about 6 years or so, but it's called Automatic, and they're a 3-piece electronic band from LA. It's all really spunky, super smart women who are just so fun to watch and listen to. I love Automatic. And then I read a ton of books about goth music. That is my favorite reading. And 2 years ago, there were 3 books about goth, all published at the same time. There was The Art of Darkness, The History of Goth, and Goth, A History, and Season of the Witch, The Book of Goth. So those 3 have been my creative outlet for, I don't know, 6 months now.
Not surprisingly, Matt made the best mixtapes back when people made mixtapes.
I know, and I don't make playlists because there's something about them that just feels like I'm too stubborn or something. Like I would still make you a mix CD before I would just make you a playlist.
You're stubborn about the technology.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really stubborn about tech at all, but
it feels different somehow. So do you get to do teaching as well at St. Olaf?
I don't, and I'm really happy about that. First of all, we do about 190 services a year that are different. So every single day we're doing some kind of worship service, and the kind of creativity that goes into creating 190 different services is just overwhelming. But also I love being at a college where I don't give people grades. Nobody, when they see me on campus, mutters under their breath, he gave me a C.
Right. Yeah.
And so I love being in a position where I'm not evaluating what you've done. Secretly judged, though.
Right, of course.
But no, I'm kidding.
Because you're putting them in boxes.
Because who doesn't?
Comparing.
Because we categorize, right?
How has your background in speech and debate prepared you for life?
Oh man, there's nothing better than speech and debate. It's the greatest. Truly, I think there are a lot of things that I did that I'm proud of. I was an Eagle Scout. I was an athlete, or I am an Eagle Scout, I guess is how I'm supposed to word it. But I can say I was an athlete. It's not like once an athlete, always an athlete. Right. You lose that. Yeah, speech and debate, it helped in every way, from obviously public speaking, but in thinking about arguments, in writing papers and thinking about audiences, in every single step of it is still used every day. And I preach without notes in the front, but I have a manuscript that I write and I memorize, and I know exactly where I'm going to be. And it's a completely different way of speaking that I think you'd be able to do if you didn't really have training in public speaking and in writing.
Because I first knew of you in that context.
Yeah. In fact, I was a state champion in extemporaneous speaking, and my coach got really mad in high school because I just didn't believe in introductions at all. And I still remember the exact introduction. My question at the state tournament in extemporaneous speaking was, who will be the next president of the United States? It was 1988. And my intro was, George Bush will be the next president of the United States, and here's why. And she was like, you can't start like that. And I won. And
So you can.
So you can. But that's basically how I start sermons. sermons too. Like,
You just lay it out.
this gospel is about blank, and here's why. And you don't need, in fact, I think it's distracting to have a 3-minute story about what your kid said in the backseat of the car that week. I'm just get to the point.
You are very well suited to write commentaries because there aren't introductions to each little section.
There are not, yeah. But I will say, I included, because I keep, just for the joy of it, a list of all my favorite bands and songs. And anywhere I can put them into the text, I do in a way that no one would know. And I put them together so that you would see a cluster. So I have a whole section where there's The Cure and all of The Cure songs that I could fit in albums. And I have a section on Joy Division, which was hard to get in. But if you end a word with a sentence with joy and start the next sentence with division, which I did, then you can get Joy Division in. And Bauhaus, which is like my favorite goth band, was hard. But I have a paragraph of 7 sentences, and each of the sentences begin with Bauhaus. And in that paragraph are all 5 of their album titles.
Oh, my word.
So I don't do a lot with intros or conclusions, but I have fun by sticking in all of the different, I suppose you could call them Easter eggs.
Yes.
I listened to this really awesome, terrible industrial band called Skinny Puppy, and I wrote a commentary on Matthew and the story where Jesus throws scraps to the dogs. I translated the dog as a skinny puppy, and then I put in album titles in that. And the editor thought it was weird, but didn't change it. So I have a big Skinny Puppy section too in a Matthew commentary.
Do you think people will catch it?
No one.
You are the one Venn diagram of
Exactly. Yeah. Who
Hebrews
would think
and
it's
goth.
cool? Who would see it? Only Matt. Yeah, exactly. I'm really proud of it. I love to point it out. I'm like, here's my Bauhaus paragraph.
I love that. That makes me so happy that you're just continuing on being Matt just in all of your work that you're doing.
There's no question. And there's no money in it. So if you're not going to make money, then at least I want to know that, like, at Oxford and Cambridge, when this is on the shelf, Bauhaus is hidden.
It'll be like Taylor Swift lyrics, and they always find another meaning.
Yeah.
And it's
I have so much in common with Taylor Swift.
it sounds like it.
Apparently.
And that's
So
what I'm
Apparently.
and that's
so
what I'm
much.
hearing from your story. And speaking well to 20-somethings. That's what she does.
I have a really funny sort of Taylor Swift story. Do you have
Yes.
time? So the Prince of Norway was on campus about a month ago.
Of course.
Yeah. And the 2 days before he was going to be on campus, the Bishop of Norway was on campus. And the Bishop of Norway spoke in chapel, and I had lunch with him, and we spent some time. And then later that night, we were at an event at the Minneapolis Institute of Art where the Prince would be. And the Bishop and Katie and I were hanging out. And he's a great guy. And this person came up to me and said, I think that you and the Prince have a lot of music in common, just so you know. And I thought, if there's any chance, then I would bring it up. And of course, that night there was no chance. And I thought, well, there will be no chance, and that's fine. But when he was on campus 2 days later, there was a time where we were in this room, and it was a short break before he was going to speak in chapel where he could use the restroom and get a drink of coffee. And so a small group of us were in there, and he came up to me, and I was wearing a claret collar. He asked about my job, and I said, oh, it's the best. I get to spend time with students and talk about everything from love to majors to what they want to do with their life to the new Taylor Swift album. And he said, you don't look like a Taylor Swift fan. To which I said, actually, I live on the kind of punk and goth end of town. And he just looked really intently and said, who? And I was like, oh, sweet. So I said a couple bands, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell phone and opened it and handed it to me and said, put him in Spotify. I'll listen to him on the plane. His security, of course, is like, why, Prince, are you giving your phone to this stranger? And I was trying to figure it out because it's set up, of course, with the Norwegian alphabet with different A's and things. But I put bands in his Spotify and handed his phone back. And then you would think that I was being the music geek, but he totally music geeked out and talked about concerts and when he got to hang out with James Hetfield from Metallica and about this great Norwegian black metal store in Oslo that I should go to. And so he's very much into this discussion. And then we said, okay, we have to go to chapel. And so we walked in, and then he was the Prince again, and I was the college pastor. But for a moment, we got this
You had a
great
commonality.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's good.
I feel like you have this way about you, Matt, though, that you're able to have those kinds of conversations with a lot of people. Like, I've always experienced you that way. And maybe that's what makes you a good campus pastor, too, is you're able to talk with people about anything, you know?
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. That was a very sweet thing to say. Thank you.
I have a very important question. You're at St. Olaf. Princes, important people come. How many people come there thinking a golden girl is from there?
The Golden Girls are more popular with college students right now than you'd think.
Well, so like one of them is from St. Olaf.
One of them is from the fictitious town of St.
Right,
Olaf,
but
Minnesota.
it's
Right.
sort of like looking for Lake Wobegon.
Exactly. So we do get a lot of students who either reference Olaf from Frozen or
right.
Golden Girls. Those are the two big. I'll say too, one thing about what I love about working with college students is
Yeah.
I found that, of course, there's all of the appropriate and necessary boundaries. I mean, I only share myself in ways that are helpful and appropriate. But if I am myself, if I like the music I like, and if I am authentically me, it's a signal to students that they can be authentically them. As soon as they think that I'm wearing some kind of mask, then they put a mask up. And that doesn't mean that there needs to be any oversharing or any kind of boundary crossing. But if they just come in and they know, hey, these are the things that I get excited about and I find to be lovely and funny. And if I claim an identity, then they can claim an identity. And it doesn't have to be the same identity. For example, our worship space has been super popular my entire time with gay and lesbian students, with queer students. LGBTQIA community has been deeply embedded in what we do. I'm cisgender, straight, 54-year-old. Like, you could look at me and say, what is it that would be invitational about this gray-haired guy? But I think students know that I am just really genuine about myself and this proclamation of welcome and grace and joy. And it allows people to be themselves in a way that I think is really beautiful. So working with students, I think too, is when we are authentically ourselves, it does invite people into being authentically themselves, even if we're super different.
Yes.
I love that. I'm glad you added
Yeah,
that.
me too. Oh, is there anything else?
No, this is just so cool. You've done this over 100 times.
Lots of times. Yeah. We love talking
It's
to
very
people.
weird. We're in the top 5% in the world.
That's amazing. I'm just so honored.
Thank
Good job, you
Well,
two.
Thank
yeah.
you.
I truly am honored. Hey, but Ruth, especially, listen to Automatic.
Okay, I wrote it down.
So
Yeah.
it's hard to look them up because the name is so normal. But here, I will tell you.
I have lots of memories of Matt coming into my dorm room at seminary and saying, "You've got to listen to this." He'd have a CD and he'd play a song, and
Yeah.
you got to listen to this.
So maybe start with their first album called Signal. And they're on Spotify and they're just cool. Like, they're the kind of people that you're like, if I knew them, we probably wouldn't be friends because they're cooler than I am. But they're also really weird and dorky, and they are a great new band.
I will listen to it. And just yesterday, I was doing something and had music going, and there was a Nine Inch Nails song that came on. And I was remembering when you and I went to a concert, and we started out up front, and the mosh pit got really scary, really fast. Retreat.
I just saw them this summer again. They were
Oh,
great. Yeah, they were really
Yes,
good.
it was a good concert. Anyway, good memories. Thank you so much for being with us today,
Yeah.
Matt.
Thank you for joining us for Created Creative.
Yes, we're so glad that you were with us. Share this podcast with a friend, and don't forget to go create something.
Go create something.